I love you said, what an intro.
Wow.
Well, we couldn't write it if it wasn't true.
Oh, thank you so much. Everyone's so kind and nice here.
How does it feel to finally be done? I just wrote my first novel, and mine is fiction, yours is fact.
Yeah.
When you finish the pages of this, knowing where your family came from and where you are now, how did that feel for you?
I didn't want it to go. I kept holding on to it.
It was like your baby?
Yes, like I didn't want the publishers to have it, but in the end, it had to go out there. But it's such a brilliant sort of emotion to go through. You know, I started in Africa.
Yeah.
We had to flee. Ended up in England. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to be here. I'd been othered my whole life. So to be able to write a book.
You've been othered your whole life. You write about that, and you've talked a lot about that.
Yes, I mean, that's why I called it A Visible Man. You know, I am black, I'm gay, I'm working class, you know, I'm a refugee, everything that was supposed to make me invisible.
Yeah.
So every step of my life has been to show that I am worth it.
It was Idris Elba? That's a good... You keep good
Idris,
company.
my friend.
Let me tell you, Idris Elba tells you to write a book, you're going to finish it. Idris, one of your closest friends. Idris told you had to do this, but what was his advice?
So it was lockdown, and I went for a walk with Idris. And I said, Idris, you know, I've been asked to write my memoir so many times, but I feel like this is the right time. We're in lockdown. The world is upside down. And Idris said, my man, it's like, if you write a book, show us, you know, the good life, you know, the high life. Yeah. You roll with presidents and leaders and the most beautiful women in the world. And I was like, that's not my story. It's part of my story, but that's not my story. My story really is about just somebody from the outside who wasn't supposed to be an editor for Vogue.
When you say, I always think about that, you say, I wasn't supposed to be that. What do you think the world told you were supposed to be?
Oh, the world told me, you know, you're not good enough. You know, you're not good enough. And you saw, I also suffered from, you know, imposter syndrome. So even, you know, no matter how well you do, something in your head is saying you're not good enough. People are telling you you're not good enough. You go into certain spaces and you don't feel welcome. But you know what I did?
What?
I just worked through it.
Yeah.
I was going to let it happen.
Yeah. You know,
I wasn't going to fail.
And that failure was not the option.
It was not an option.
It was not, yesterday or the day before, I'm there looking through one of the magazines, and I saw a party for you in London.
Yes.
And they were celebrating the memoir, and I'll get emotional because I know what it feels like to go back to places where people thought you weren't going to be who you are. And I thought about what it must feel like for you to walk into that room knowing that some of the same types of people would not have seen you had you not put in the work. How emotional, I get goosebumps.
I mean, it was very emotional because, you know, fashion, it's very cyclical. There were people in there who really didn't think I should make it.
Well, when you walk by those people, not to be petty, but when you're in the fashion
What, do I give a dirty look?
When you're in the fashion room and they're all there to see you, and you know that one person said, he ain't gonna make it. Yeah. When you see that, you just wink and smile and autograph the book.
And I go, how are you doing? Very English. You know, Minnie, I'm from England. How are you? Is everything okay? How's life?
Well, listen, when we come back, how Edward's father struggled to support his fashion career and how the relationship and what changed in Edward's life to change his relationship with his father, plus how an illness nearly took away his gift after the break. Welcome back. Today we are talking to people who defied the odds and made their wildest dreams come true. I'm excited to continue the conversation with our very special guest, the Editor-in-Chief of British Vogue, Edward Enninful. He has a riveting new memoir called A Visible Man. Edward, in the book, you talk about the early years in your career, and you wrote, it was becoming clear to me that fashion's main players were having a far easier time imagining white women stylists as a fit for the top consulting jobs. I wasn't trusted in the same ways they were, or included in the same conversations, or seen as the big creative contributor in the ways that my editorial work should have been made more obvious. So many times we hear that people of color have to work harder, twice as hard.
Twice as hard.
Twice as hard. But that means sometimes you're twice as tired. And it can be grueling. It's a badge of honor to work hard, but it also, I think, sometimes is lost in the conversation of what it takes. How did you deal with it and not give up? I think so many people are fascinated, especially with fashion.
Yes. As I say in the book, there were so many moments I did want to give up because there I was working night and day on this incredible magazine, ID, that was sort of defining the 90s in England, and I wasn't getting the jobs my stylists on my level were. And there were days when I would fall into depression. I'm going to be very honest. There were days I didn't really want to get up and go to work. But there's something about the immigrant mentality that says, I have to break through this.
Yeah.
I have to break through this. I have to do whatever I can to get there. And also, I have to pave the way for a new, a next generation of black kids.
Which is so true.
So
because
important.
When I remember when you first made headlines and you took on some of the status quo, you called out some of it. And so often, people get the job and then they're afraid to make waves.
Not me. I mean, all I know is, look, I was the chosen one. I was the token one. And sometimes when you're the token, you're like, I'm just going to get on with it. And with me, it was not about that. It was bringing people up with me.
Yeah.
So I brought makeup artist Pat McGrath. I hang out with Naomi Campbell. I brought people up with me because I wanted to surround myself with people who knew me and knew what it felt like to be on your own in an industry back then. I mean, now it's a little different, but back then I was the only one.
Listen, it's different because of you. I mean, we see remarkable colors of women of color, of black women that we would have never seen ever in history. I am 52 years old. I know that. But I love talking to people I consider superheroes because your origin story matters. And your origin story, as you pointed out, is in Africa. It is of two immigrant parents. And you wrote of your mother. My mother was my comforter and my champion, and a formative example for me of courage and the power of imagination. My mom is here in the studio. She came because she knows how much I love you. I know that your mom passed away almost 7 years ago, a year before you became an editor-in-chief of British Vogue. When you look at her,
I mean, she was incredible. I was a sickly child. I was a shy, spacey child, but my mum would look after me every minute of the day. We would sketch together, would make clothes together. And everybody talks about, how I see black women. I grew up with my mother and her atelier, the most beautiful women coming in, women of all sizes, shapes, heights. I mean, I grew up thinking big is beautiful. That's all I knew.
Well, that's true because so many people associate. There's so many people who think of you and think about what you've done in the space of race, but you've done it also in shape. You told the fashion industry in so many ways to stop believing that one type is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, there was one type, Yeah, and when I was in the industry, there was one type. It was like to be tall, thin, blonde or whatever. And for me, with the background I'd come from, I mean, women are so incredible. And I'm like, why would you leave out women of all races, shapes and sizes, women from different religions, age? For me, it was like I couldn't create a magazine without representing the world. It was just easy.
You write a lot about your father and not feeling accepted by your father. And I was so struck that losing your mother opened the door for you and your father to mend. What was that like, and what has that added to this part of your journey?
I mean, my father was always a military man.
He was a major.
A major, an African, very strict. We were brought up very strict, so I was always scared of him. And, you know, we had so many challenges, me growing up, and I left home. And then my mother had a stroke. Sort of, my God, now, so many years, I can't remember how many years. And I saw this man who I always thought was so cold and so regimented, just look after my mother from morning till night for 15 years. Wouldn't have a carer in the house. And our relationship started to change. I'd go back and we'd have more conversations. And then I got awarded, you know, an OBE by the Queen of England. And, you know, he couldn't believe, you know, he had to leave, flee, essentially. Yeah. A country, or, you know, God knows what would have happened to him. It was a military coup. So I think he was so proud when I got the OBE. He would tell all my friends that he was so proud. And that's how we started mending, sort of, you know, our relationship. It took a lot of years, I have to tell you.